Hello. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Lindsay, and besides being a very proud Googler, I'm also a wife. My husband's here today. I am a mother to two adorable children, and I am also a humanitarian. And up until about 2 weeks ago, I never would have described myself that way. Yes, I donate every year and I participate in Google Serve, but I never felt like I was doing enough to make a difference in the world to use that label. But then about 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference with about 400 other Googlers, and somebody there actually read us the definition of what a humanitarian was. So I'm going to read that to you today. A person who seeks to promote human welfare. A person looking to promote the health, happiness, and fortunes of a person. A person looking to promote the basic physical and material well-being of people in need. Now, none of you would be here today with us live or joining us over live stream if you too weren't humanitarians. So I want to thank you for coming today, taking time out of your day to discuss how we together as a group of humanitarians can work together to combat human trafficking. Now, it was about a year ago that I first learned about Willow. Up until then, I knew that human trafficking was an issue, but it always felt too dark. It felt too disturbing to think about, much less talk about. Not exactly dinner party conversation, I think we can agree. But it was during a 2-hour lunch that I had with my dear friend Kim that day when I realized that because it's dark and because it's disturbing is exactly why we need to be talking about it. During that lunch, she shared with me the amazing work that Willow was doing and shared these incredible stories about the strength and the resilience of the survivors. So here I am today talking about it, hosting my first talk at Google. So on to our incredible speakers here. We are lucky to have with us today Kelsey Galaway, the founder and executive director of Willow International. Kelsey lived in Uganda from 2010 to 2015, where she worked in the anti-trafficking effort just out of college. And while there, she founded Willow, an organization that provides aftercare programs for survivors and is dedicated to the prevention of human trafficking. She founded Willow to provide aftercare services that would keep victims from getting re-trafficked and ultimately to eradicate the global epidemic. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Studies from the University of California, Irvine, and is currently obtaining her PhD. And we're also joined by Shannon Rogers, who started Change a Path, which is a donor circle that is focused on supporting anti-trafficking initiatives domestically and internationally. They are fully volunteer run, have about 70 members with varying levels of involvement and giving. And they expect to be granting out $300,000 to grassroots efforts this year. So I will let Kelsey and Shannon take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank all of you for taking time out of your day to be here to talk to us about this important issue. Like Lindsay said, it is really dark, and a lot of people shy away from learning about it, from talking about it. When she said it's not dinner conversation, that's true, unless you're Shannon and I, and this is all of our dinner conversations talking about human trafficking. So thank you. It means a lot to us. So we're going to get into it with a brief overview of what human trafficking is, because we all enter this conversation with a vast understanding of what the issue is. Human trafficking, simply put, is modern day slavery, but it's not a simple issue. It's a really complex criminal industry, and it's human beings profiting off of the exploitation of other human beings through a variety of different exploitations, including forced labor and commercial sexual abuse, among other things. It is the third largest and fastest growing criminal industry in the world. It's a huge thing to take in. And if we think about it, the reason it's fast growing, the reason it's about to surpass drug trafficking or arms trafficking is because human beings are a reusable commodity, sadly. Unlike drugs, which can be sold once and used once, human beings can be sold multiple times and profited off of multiple times. There are over 40 million victims of trafficking worldwide. It's a huge number, hard to grasp what that looks like, but it's more than the entire population of the state of California living in slavery. It's also a huge industry with profits of over $150 billion annually, which is more than Apple, Samsung, BP, Exxon, and Microsoft combined. It's out of control. And 1 in 4 victims is a child. So why is it growing so fast, and where? Simply put, trafficking is an exploitation of vulnerable people. So trafficking happens everywhere, but primarily it grows and it thrives in places where you have populations with high vulnerability. And the International Labor Organization reported last year that the region in the world with the highest prevalence is Africa. And my experience is that that also is the region with the least amount of organizations and people working to combat it. Another reason that it's growing is that traffickers are acting with impunity. There's no fear of being caught. There's no fear of being punished. And as John Cotton Richmond, who's about to be the US Ambassador for Trafficking, always tells me, traffickers are more likely to be struck by lightning than convicted of trafficking. So we're not dedicating enough resources to fighting it, and traffickers are able to traffic people with really no fear of being caught. We work in Uganda, and Uganda is in East Africa, and it is a global hub for human trafficking. It is a source, a destination, and a transit country, and what that means is that people are trafficked into Uganda, through Uganda, and Ugandans are trafficked from Uganda all over the world, far off places like the United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Malaysia, and China. So it's a huge issue, and it's human beings doing horrible things to other people. But the hopeful part of this is that human beings can also do amazing things to work together to stop this and to protect vulnerable people. And that is what Willow has set out to do, and we do that through collaboration, which we'll get into. Our mission is to end human trafficking, and that's a big mission. We are doing that through prevention, providing restorative care to survivors, and partnering with governments, nonprofits, and international agencies. So we have a short video we're going to share with you that explains our work in greater detail.
It's so challenging to our psyches as human beings that there are still today in 2018 people enslaving and abusing and torturing other human beings for profit. People get comfortable in the world in which they live, and hearing about that can be overwhelming, and so they tend to stay away from it.
Girls who are here, some of them are single mothers, they can't look after their children, and they can't find a living in this country. So they become vulnerable to the groups. Say they promise them jobs, they take them to the Middle East or elsewhere, their passport is taken away, they have no money, they have no food. So these people, you employ them like slaves. I shouldn't use the word employs them, they use them as slaves.
So that evening, phone calls were coming in, and this came to my notice that they were ordering us. They were putting us on order, like men were placing orders like, I want the one with big boobs, I want the one with big booty, I want the one slim or fat. So the men came in, they put us in a van, and then they delivered us like packages. Our hope was finished. We had nowhere to go, we had no passport, and they were scaring us. If you ever walk out of this place and go, we are going to throw you in the desert and kill you from there. Your family will never even know your way out.
I think people have an innate desire for it not to be true, that people are enslaving human beings. We get asked the prevalence question all the time. How big is the problem? How big is the problem? And I think what belies that question is a disbelief in the magnitude of it.
The International Labor Organization estimates that traffickers annually rake in over $150 billion a year in profits. That's more than the annual profits of Exxon, Samsung, Apple, and BP combined. Trafficking is big business. 92% or 93% of all trafficking is happening in the developing world.
The world must worry, and solutions must be found. It's not enough for European countries, the United States, to shut their borders. It's not enough.
Uganda is important in fighting human trafficking because it is acting as an example to the neighboring East African countries. Regionally, Uganda and Kenya are the ones which are trying their best to see that trafficking in East Africa comes to an end.
Uganda is one of the most stable countries in East Africa, and it's poised, I believe, to become a regional, if not continental, leader in the anti-trafficking fight.
But you see, when you have a problem, someone helps you even to start. And so Willow's organization comes in and helps us to identify the problem and start thinking on how to address it.
Willow International partners with organizations and governments all over the world to coordinate the rescue of victims of human trafficking. We get referrals from government agencies, international agencies, and other nonprofits who work on the ground in countries to ensure that victims are rescued from situations of trafficking, taken back home, and given the services that they need to heal and be reintegrated with families. By focusing our efforts here, we are leveraging resources and impact to create change on the global issue of human trafficking. In Uganda, we formed a coalition of nonprofit organizations so that each organization could focus on their expertise and have the greatest collective impact.
The reason that we need coalitions to decimate this problem is that then we get multiple views of what the problem is. Any one organization is only going to ever see one piece of the problem and is only going to be able to respond in one aspect of the solution. And if you get everybody around the table, you start seeing aspects of the problem that you never saw before. So this complex issue requires a very diverse and multi-sector response.
And it's about relationships so that the governmental and the non-governmental organizations work together. Police, prosecutors, and victim service providers as well, have them all partner together and come to training together so that they can then become a team. They have different functions and different roles, but they all have the same goal, and that's the rescue of enslaved human beings and the conviction of people who are doing the enslaving.
We provide therapeutic aftercare services to victims of human trafficking. And what this looks like is holistic care. Access to health care, residential services, psychosocial support through counseling, reintegration services with family, and help getting back on their feet, whether that's through an educational scholarship, access to a job, or provision of capital to start up a business. And our programs work. The survivors, despite all that they have gone through, send their kids to school, buy their own houses, get full-time jobs, or start their own businesses, and go on to lead full, healthy lives.
During the last 15 years that I've been working full-time in the human trafficking space, I have seen a lot of service-providing nonprofit organizations. And there are few that I have been impressed with as much as Willow. I have been to Willow's sites, I have seen their facilities, I have met the individuals that work there and the individuals whom they care for. It is amazing. It is a place of hope, it is a place of joy, it is a place of healing.
So as the video showed, we have a model that we have seen is successful in ending trafficking, spreading awareness, preventing the crime, and providing restorative care to those who have been victimized by it. And as you see in the diagram, what holds rescue, restoration, and reform together is collaboration. Because no organization, no government can do all of these things perfectly. And so we have to learn from one another and be more collaborative, more integrated than the traffickers who are thriving in this crime right now. Restoration is how I got into this work in the first place, working directly with survivors of trafficking. And it is amazing to see the resiliency and the strength of people who have been through the unimaginable. And our aftercare homes are places of joy and love and hope And we just wanted to show you a couple of photos of what it's like. This is one of our homes in Uganda. Right now, 15 women live there with their young children, receiving all of the services that they need to heal and recover from what they've been through. This month, we're having a huge graduation ceremony where women who have been in our program will be reintegrating back into community and families, and survivors from past graduating classes will be coming back to share their stories of where they are now, how they're doing, and support other survivors in the program. So it's a real family environment. The survivor you saw in the video was an adult woman, and we can't show videos of the children in our program, but this isn't just adult women who are being trafficked. The women, the people in our program are as young as 2 years old. So this is happening to very, very young children. One of the things that many of our donors and supporters find really important is the impact that their dollar can have in the developing world. The average cost of a year of therapeutic aftercare in the US is $172,000. And sadly, recidivism rates, so being re-trafficked, is often, the estimates are 70% of victims who are rescued are re-trafficked at least once. So that is a lot of money going into these programs. Our organization, the average cost of a year of aftercare is only $6,000. And we have a 95% success rate in preventing re-victimization for those who have gone through our program. One of the things that excites me the most about our work is the reform. So when I got into this work and started by providing aftercare, what kept me up at night was that the organization I was working for wasn't doing anything to stop the flow. We weren't cutting off the pipeline. We were getting referrals from community members who were identifying girls who had been trafficked, but nothing was happening to the traffickers. And when you work in a community filled with vulnerable people, it's just a sea of vulnerable people for traffickers to bring into that spot where the one girl was rescued was working. And so when I founded Willow, this was one of the most important things that I wanted to work on, was figuring out how do we stop the flow, how do we change the system so that victims are protected and that traffickers are prosecuted. And we have been very successful with that. The Chief Justice, who you saw in the video, through our advocacy efforts, shared that he wants combating trafficking to be a part of his legacy, and he's taking steps to do so, designating prosecutors to fight trafficking. They are forming a specialized unit in Uganda to combat trafficking. So it's amazing to see with a little bit of work and having a collaborative spirit the impact you can have on an entire nation. And it's super cost effective. This is just conversations, knocking on doors, asking people to use their resources and their influence to protect other vulnerable people. And collaboration is key in this. And Shannon and I were just talking on the way over about what collaboration means to us. And she asked me, what does this mean to you? And collaboration means to me having the humility to know that you don't know everything, and having the value of learning, wanting to learn and connect with other people who have been in the field longer or have various expertise that could help you reach a shared vision. And this is a map of our global footprint. You can see that although Uganda is a country of only 30 million people, we have a huge network that consists of rescue organizations, governments, international agencies who are all working together to combat trafficking, whether that's preventing it, prosecuting traffickers, reforming criminal justice systems, or ensuring that victims are rescued and brought home. And as the famous Helen Swarn says, a networked problem requires a networked solution. And traffickers are networked. They figure out in Uganda how to get a girl from a rural village to the city's capital onto a plane with a visa and vaccination forged documents to get to Thailand. All of that is done through collaborative efforts of a lot of people. So if we want to combat this, we need to be more collaborative, more networked than the traffickers. And collaboration can feel like a fluffy word, but it's really not a fluffy thing. To give you some examples of what collaboration looks like for us, We have rescue partners in Thailand. So we connect with organizations who work with the Thai police and Thai government to identify victims of trafficking, get them out of those situations, and send them home. So one of those organizations is Nightlight. And this year, I would imagine they've sent around 20, 25 Ugandan victims who have been trafficked to Thailand back to Uganda to receive restorative care and be reintegrated back into communities. However, we don't just stop there. Through our partners in these other countries, we say, hey, how can we have a bigger impact? We see this pipeline of Ugandans being trafficked to Thailand. What can we do to stop it? And so we both approached the Thai government and the Ugandan government and said, how can we support you in combating this? And they said, let's set up a call. And so what we did in Uganda, we went to one of our pro bono lawyer partners and said, hey, can you donate a conference room to us? We had a Skype call where we had the Ugandan prosecutor for human trafficking, the lead criminal investigator for human trafficking, and the human trafficking task force coordinator on a Skype call with the Thai government where they developed solutions together to how they could stop this trafficking syndicate. They're now developing a mutual legal assistance agreement where they will start sharing evidence to prosecute these traffickers and stop the global syndicate. So it's amazing how simple that is when you just get people in a room and say, hey, how can we collaborate to stop this thing? I believe that through this, we're going to see the pipeline into Thailand from Uganda be shut down. And it really cost us no more than the salaries of the staff who are working on this project. We also partner with academia. So last year we did a research on how do we prevent trafficking? What do these communities know about trafficking? What are their attitudes towards it? And how do we stop it? And that was done with Yale Law School. We also partner with Pepperdine University Law School's Global Justice Program. And through that, we've trained 150 judges on the Ugandan trafficking law, and we educated 150 key government members on what trafficking was. And that's opened up this floodgate of the Ugandan government's involvement in wanting to make stopping trafficking a priority. The other thing that we believe is really important with collaboration is collaborating with people, donors, who want to dedicate their resources. They may not want to quit their day job to stop and join a nonprofit or join the government to stop trafficking, but they're passionate about it. They want to learn, they want to get involved, and financial support is a way that they can do that. And I think that that is a key component that nonprofit organizations need to focus on, is how do we bring people who have a heart to do this into the work. And that is where Shannon comes in, and she has created a really innovative model for how donors can help join the fight to combat human trafficking. She's going to take it from here.
Hi. Thanks so much for having us here. This is just awesome. It's awesome that you guys are showing this interest, and it's, as Kelsey's saying, this issue's huge and it's heavy. And I often am saying to our members and donors, because I know they can come to some of our gatherings and feel that weight, when you're out in the field and you're meeting all these people that are actually implementing solutions and driving change and doing it, the weight sort of starts to spread and go away, because there are some amazing people out there doing amazing work. And I'm appreciative that Google is taking the time to highlight somebody like Kelsey and what she's doing with Willow, because they are one of those organizations that are truly doing amazing work in addressing this big issue. So I do run Change a Path. We're a donor circle that is focused on supporting anti-trafficking initiatives, really supporting grassroots organizations in their work to address these issues. And we do have about 70 members, like you said earlier, but the 70 members that are involved in their varying ways. And as you can imagine, in running a grant-making program, having 70 members be involved in those decisions would not be very fun or effective. It would be quite frustrating, actually. So we have a committee of 5 that does all of our vetting. And a big part of our vetting is really, we've developed our process. This past year, we gave to 10 organizations about $300,000. We've funded 14 different organizations over the last 3 years. And we consider our grantees partners in this work, because we we view this as collaborative work. We think this is so important to bring everybody, all the stakeholders to the table to get people working together. And to me, it's a huge compliment that Kelsey asked me to be up here with her presenting on this, because some organizations do not think of funders as partners. But the reality is funders really do need to be partners in this, because to be funding effectively, to be funding well, you need to be doing a lot of research. You need to do all the learning that Kelsey's talking about. So we spend a lot of time. So we have our processes, we have our criteria, but most of our time is truly spent on learning. It's meeting organizations, meeting many people in the space and in the industry doing different things, going to conferences. I had the good fortune to meet Kelsey at a conference in Bangkok, and it was like a dream for me, because all of a sudden I'm having dinner with Kelsey, a woman from Bangkok working in Bangkok to address the issues there, a woman in Guangzhou to address the issues in China, and they're all talking about how to best support each other, how they deal with different situations. There's so much learning that needs to happen, and we need to provide platforms and opportunities to share all that learning. And as a funder, we feel like sharing that learning is an important role in what we do. And when I say that, it's not about talking to organizations or grantees and telling them what they need to do or what the best way is. It truly starts from a point of listening to them. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What do they want support with? It's not about telling them you should do this. It's about how do we best help you? And then I can help connect you to other resources, to other people doing this work, or other models. When Kelsey started talking about her prevention program, we were able to talk about some programs in India that were doing similar work, and maybe she'd want to go read about them. That kind of shared learning is what's so critical to helping organizations work in their communities, but also moving the whole anti-trafficking movement forward. We have a long way to go. We're really, we've learned a lot, but there's a long way to go and a lot of support needed, and there's best practices out there. There's great, like the research piece is really picking up in a lot of ways. So as a donor, it's about funding that collaboration, funding the new initiatives, the new ways of doing things, and exploring different opportunities. So we truly believe that collectively we need to do this, and it's about helping our grantees and even the organizations that we're not funding but we work with closely, helping them expand their network, because the network piece is critical. So it's all about learnings, it's about networking, it's about doing this collectively and collaboratively. So sorry, I can ramble. So I think the amazing thing I want to highlight about Willow, and so when we are looking at organizations to fund, I think Kelsey has a very collaborative approach to doing this, but one of the amazing things about that is what she's doing. She gave a couple examples. She basically is just knocking on people's doors. She's asking the questions. She's getting out there and pulling other people into the conversation. So when you're talking to different organizations or learning about different organizations in this space, if they think what they're doing is the only way to do it or the best way, it's a big red flag, because these issues are so complex and so integrated into our culture, whether it's in the US or Uganda, Bangkok, anywhere, it's happening everywhere. We need to be knocking on doors. We need to be engaging more people and talking to more about possible solutions, and we need to be investing in different solutions. So, thank you.
Shannon, could you share a bit about why you chose a collaborative model for funding?
You mean in having it be a donor circle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was first exposed to a donor circle when I was living in Hong Kong, and it was such a brilliant form of philanthropy, because it engaged people at the level at which they wanted to engage, and you end up pooling your money together and granting it out in thoughtful, creative ways and fully vetted, so you know where your money is going. And I know, I think it so impressed me because it was so efficient and so effective, and it was collaborative, and there was a community. You could create a community around it. And when I moved back to the US, I wanted to do something similar, and then I got hit really hard by the fact that you're asked for money all the time. Like if you have children in schools, you're asked all the time. And they're in different clubs or different sports, you're asked all the time. So I sort of went back a bit and said, oh, I don't want to be another ask. I don't want to be involved in that. But then I realized it's such a missed opportunity for engagement, and especially when it comes to something like trafficking, which was a very strong interest of mine, and I had been supporting organizations in Asia addressing these issues. But it was the perfect model to be addressing those issues, because it's about educating more people and engaging more people, while at the same time doing it thoughtfully and effectively, if that is an answer to your question. Because as a community, as Change a Path has grown, we have events and communicate or engage more and more people in talking about the solutions and like really building on our knowledge base. And it's been an impactful organization in that way and creating that community. So,
yeah, we'll open it up to questions now.
I should sit on my hands, I think.
Thanks so much for sharing. I'm really curious about the centers that the houses that you have for everyone to have this safe place to be. Mm-hmm. How do you really ensure that the survivors are staying safe, and that these locations, which seem to be a safe haven, but that could also be a target if people know that this is a place where people, can be re-trafficked or stuff like that. So how do you keep these centers safe?
Yeah, well, in establishing safety for anyone, having clear boundaries and expectations is super important. So when any survivor comes into our program, they have a case manager who briefs them through an orientation. These are the rules of the house, these are the rules of the program, this is how we keep you safe. This is when the gate closes, this is when you need to be indoors. So we have clear protocols for safety for each house depending on if it's children, adults with children. We also have 24/7 security. And so two of our homes right now have armed police because of the severity of the situation. So if we get a referral from the government of cases and we assess it as a high risk, we ask for police guards to be on the property. And they are highly trained, very professional. We have a really good working relationship with the police that we work with, because they give us the highly trained people who understand working and protecting children. Does that answer your question?
Hi, thank you for giving the presentation. Very interesting. I was wondering, with regards to collaboration, what is it that companies like YouTube or Google can do? Do these victims ever have access to internet whilst they're being trafficked? Are there any touch points with any of our products?
I know that Google is doing a lot to fight human trafficking. They have helped fund and collaborate to start helplines. I know that they work with Polaris, which is the national hotline here in the US, which is a super easy number. If you do see a victim of trafficking, look up Polaris, and that's the number that you can call. You can even text. So Google is doing a lot to do this, and I think they do it in a way that's very thoughtful. I always call Shannon a thoughtful donor, because she researches, she tries to understand the needs of the organizations in the movement. And from what I know about Google, they're doing the same. They're doing this work very thoughtfully and partnering with organizations who are doing it really well. I think what could be, where we could step it up is just more people getting involved and more employees at Google saying, this is really important to me, let's give more money, let's do more projects, and then having really long conversation strategy sessions with organizations asking what those needs are, because the needs really do need to be contextualized for the region, the demographic, the type of trafficking that it is, etc.
Hi. I'd like to know what life can be like after slavery for these women.
Yeah, that's a great question. Most people who come to our aftercare programs are really shocked by what they see, because they're not expecting the joy and the laughter that exists in our aftercare homes. So it is incredibly difficult to heal from the trauma of trafficking. It really is. But what the survivors in our program often tell us is that what's even more difficult to heal from is the vulnerabilities and the exploitation that led up to them being trafficked. Broken family relationships, previous sexual abuse. But through therapy, through counseling, through being in a loving environment where you are supported and loved just as you are, through building a social support network. One of the other programs we have is a survivor support group. So we facilitate this where they can come together and share how they've coped, managing triggers, reintegrating back into society. That's been one of their favorite programs that when we ask what's working, they say survivor support group is amazing. So life after trafficking, yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's a painful thing to heal from, but there is so much hope. There is so much restoration possible. And gosh, these people we work with are incredibly resilient. Many of them have gone on to even work for the organization or become advocates for the cause. When we had the first trafficking conference in Uganda, 6 survivors were on stage and shared their stories because they said, this happened to us and we never want this to happen to another human being. That's why we're sharing our story, even though it's painful. They become advocates and want to protect other people. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for your for sharing everything with us. I'd love to know more just about like the experience of these people in the center. Like, how long do they usually stay? And also, like, are you guys usually at capacity? Are you like turning away referrals? Yeah. Do you sort of help them find jobs? Like, just more details about that would be super interesting.
Yeah, our programs are all, we do individualized case management, which is a long way of saying that every survivor who comes into our program creates an individualized case plan with a social worker and counselor. So we don't say you got 6 months to heal and you're out the door. It really is contextualized to the individual's needs. It looks at their family of origin, what was going on before they were trafficked. Is it a safe home to return to, or do we need to find a distant relative who has a safe home who's willing to take them in, or do we need to prepare them for a life of self-sufficiency and creating a new community for them? Other factors are the level of trauma that they're experiencing. So some survivors that we work with in labor trafficking cases are actually coming back so traumatized that they're nonverbal. Some of them are unable to speak or share what's happened to them. So those cases might be with us for a longer period of time because of the intense treatment that's required to heal from that. What was the second part of your question?
Employment.
To turn people away.
Oh, yes.
Away. Like, are you guys like fully at capacity usually, or?
Yep. So our residential homes are usually at capacity, and those are our restorative safe homes. It is a constant thing that we're always fundraising for. We opened a 3rd home this year to meet the demand. But in addition to opening a home, we started a community-based care program. And this has been really effective in other countries. Not every survivor of trafficking needs to live in a safe home. Some women coming back from other countries had 3 or 4 children before they were trafficked, and they just want to get home and be with their kids and be with their families. So for those cases, we provide external services. So our mobile social work team either goes to them to provide the services, or we provide transportation for them to come to us. So we've been able to scale through that program, but we're constantly fundraising so that we can meet the demand. And I know that that's true for every aftercare organization that I've ever talked to. And then in terms of employment, that's a great way to spotlight collaboration. We right now have an organization called International Sanctuary. Shannon's wearing one of the jewelry that they've made.
Bracelets.
They employ 20 survivors in our program full-time to make jewelry and also learn job skills. Getting to work on time, conflict management. It's been an incredible program for our survivors. Some of them stay in that job for a couple years. Some of them get some startup capital and then start a business that they dreamt of doing before they were trafficked. So employment is huge, and it's one of the things that we rely heavily for collaboration on. We are actually traveling out to Uganda next month with an organization called Open Gates International, and they start culinary institutes and then corresponding bakeries or restaurants that employ survivors. as well.
I just want to thank you so much for taking so much initiative with this topic and this organization, and that's what collaboration is all about, and it takes people who take initiative to make it happen. So thank you so much for today and for helping with everything we do.
Thank you. And that's probably a good transition, because Google Giving Week kicks off again in a few weeks, November 26th. I will be running a campaign for Willow again this year. So if anybody wants to sponsor with me, I'd love it. Or, we're going to get our donation credit again, hopefully this year. So consider Willow during that week. So thank you guys for being here. And of course, ping me, email me if you guys want to get more involved. Thank you.